Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Sniper Elite 4. Today we'll be talking about the rifles of Sniper Elite 4 and the story behind them all in real life. I did a video similar to this for Call of Duty a while ago and it completely sunk, but I liked the idea of the video, and seeing as Sniper Elite fans aren't 4-year-olds, I thought you lot would be more interested in this sort of thing. So without further ado, let's get into this. First of all, we'll be looking at the M1903 Springfield, which was issued as an infantry rifle to US troops in 1903 to replace the previous Krag-Jorgensen rifles, which were viewed as too underpowered for the military. The new Springfield rifles fired the more powerful 30-06 cartridges from a longer barrel to achieve greater stopping power, accuracy, and range. The weapons stole a great many features from the rifles created by the Mauser company, who promptly sued Springfield, won the case, and then collected royalties until 1917, which must have been brilliant for Mauser, who were on the wrong side during World War I and reaping the profits of the entirety of the US military gearing up with Springfields. Later on, the M1903 Mark I was introduced, which allowed the fitting of the Peterson device, which converted the Springfield to a semi-automatic pistol-caliber rifle, supposedly useful for fighting in trenches, and whilst running across no man's land, the device was crap and never used again. The sniper variant of the Springfield, as seen in game, was designated the M1903A4 and featured no iron sights with a scope mount instead. The M1903A4 stayed in service until as late as the Korean War, although during World War II it was outgunned by the superior Mauser rifle, fielded by the German snipers, and, ironically, the gun that Springfield had copied. Next up, we're looking at the G43, which was based upon the earlier G41 self-loading rifle. The G41 was too big and too heavy, and the Germans promptly realised that a better rifle was required to compete with the Garand. The G43 used elements of both the previous G41 and Russian SVT. However, the G43 was not produced nearly as quickly as it needed to be, and went relatively unseen in the war, with only 250,000 rifles being made in Germany before the end of the war. The rifle was accurate and reliable, however, and served for a while after the war with the Czech army, although Germany stopped using the weapon immediately after the war ended. The Kar98K was based upon the older Gewehr 98 manufactured by the Mauser company. Compared to the Gewehr, the Kar98 was shorter and lighter due to a realisation that what would have been previously classed as a cavalry carbine was now more suited to warfare than the larger rifles of old. The Kar98K entered mainline service within the German army shortly after the Great War, and was improved over the years until the final version was created in 1935. The Kar98K got rid of the ability to have a bayonet in favour of a shorter barrel, and was in use with the German military until the end of World War II. The Enfield No. 4 was a driving force within the British Army during World War I, but the rifle was far from perfect. It was too complex to make quickly, and the sights were as effective as CSGO's anti-cheat. The No. 4 Mark I was adopted in 1931 and boasted a simpler design, better barrel and improved sights. The weapon was produced throughout the war in Britain, America and Canada, and was even reworked for the 7.62mm NATO cartridge after the war, and the rifle made this transition easily, a testament to the excellent design of the weapon, as it served into the 50s within countries around the Empire. The sniper version was created after sniping was dropped from military training between the wars, due to the thinking that the new and improved tanks and planes would eradicate the need for precision marksmanship. They were wrong, of course, and the sniper variant was produced with telescopic sight and cheek pad for more comfortable aiming. The Carcano M1941, despite being a top-tier weapon in game, was quite poor in real life. The weapon was based off of the M1891, which was a biblically large rifle. The weapon was outdated by the beginning of World War I, however, and instead of converting it to a more modern feed system which would have solved most of the issues, the Italians just decided to stick with the outdated model and hope. The M1941 variant, which was designed specifically for World War II, featured a barrel 4 inches shorter than that of the previous rifle, although to the average user you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference. The weapon was reliable, but the tiddly 6.5mm Carcano round was too small for effective sniper use, which is just as well as an official sniper variant was never made, and the weapon was discontinued entirely when Italy switched sides after just 2 short years in production. The Mosin-Nagant was a reliable and accurate rifle chambered for the 7.62 by 54mm Russian rifle round. The weapon was first manufactured under Russia's Tsarist regime in 1891 and was well balanced but suffered from a rather heavy barrel. The weapon was extensively manufactured in both World War I and World War II, even under the new communist regime. The sniper variant, the Mosin-Nagant M1891-30, was developed in 1930 and featured a 3.5x PU scope and a turned-down bolt handle. During the war, the Russians attempted to replace the Mosin sniper rifles with SVT sniper rifles, but the weapons were ineffective and the Mosin was reinstated as the Russian sniper rifle of choice. The 3.5x scope on the Mosin limited its range somewhat, but there was plenty for Russian snipers to do at medium range, such as eliminating machine gun crews or officers. The Mannlicher 1895 was an Austrian bolt-action rifle and the primary weapon of the Austro-Hungarian Empire during World War I. The bolt was a straight pull design, which greatly increased the fire rate of the weapon, but this design was a double-edged sword. It was all too easy for the mud to clog the mechanism in the dire conditions of trench warfare, so the Mannlicher rifles developed a reputation for unreliability. One smart design of the weapon, however, was how the empty clip was automatically ejected from the bottom of the gun after the final round had been chambered. The DeLisle Carbine was a silenced commando rifle designed by William DeLisle and intended for special operations behind enemy lines. The prototype was originally chambered in .22 long rifle, before a 9mm prototype was made, which was a failure. A 45 ACP version was made and the British Army ordered 500, but only approximately 150 were actually made. The weapon's quietness was tested by firing live rounds into the River Thames from the roof of the New Adelphi building to see if the crowd on the street below heard the weapon, and they didn't. The weapon was basically a well rod on crack, but was a proper cut and shunt job, taking the mechanism of an Enfield rifle, reworking it for 45 ACP, and then forcing it to feed from magazines nicked from the 1911 pistol. The weapon was bolt action instead of semi-automatic under the idea that if absolute silence was required after the firing, the operator could just choose not to cycle the bolt and produce unnecessary noise, whereas a self-loading rifle does this automatically. The weapon was relatively reliable and incredibly quiet, much quieter than modern silenced handguns, but suffered from poor range and questionable accuracy. As well as use by commandos in World War II, the DeLisle was used in Burma, the Korean War and the Malayan Emergency. Rumour has it that it was even used by the SAS during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. The SVT-38, also known as the Tokarev M1938, was a semi-automatic Russian rifle. It proved itself during the semi-auto rifle tests the Russians had held in the 30s, but during the war most troops were either armed with the cheaper Mosin-Nagant or the much cheaper PPSH-41 and PPS-43 submachine guns. An improved version, the SVT-40, was made, which was more durable and cheaper to produce, but ammo shortages and the fact that the Russians just couldn't stop making the PPSH stifled its ability. The SVT was so commonly captured by the Germans that they even started making ammunition for it, which ironically worked better than the Russian ammunition the gun was supplied with, and even produced training manuals for the German soldiers to read if they captured an SVT. The Winchester M1895 was the culmination of repeated design. The weapon used an internal box magazine instead of a tube, allowing for a greater variety in calibers. The weapon, despite being an American design, was manufactured mostly by the Russians, who during World War I produced almost 300,000 Winchesters. The Russian version could even be reloaded using the same clips as the Mosin-Nagant. The Winchester was buried in any war it could have fought in, due to a quagmire of political issues. The Russian troops got their repeaters far later than intended, because the Russian officials insisted on using Russian testing calibers for the tests of the rifle, despite the fact that no Russian Winchester calibers actually existed. Instead of opting for regular American Winchester rounds produced under license in Russia, they pressed forward with making their own cartridge instead, delaying the Winchester's entry into Russian service. Additionally, the Russians even rejected some Winchesters for a load of ridiculous reasons, such as the wood grain in the stock not being straight enough. Similarly, the Yanks offered 10,000 rifles for the Spanish-American War, but the war ended before the rifles arrived for the troops. Additionally, the Winchester closely lost the competition for the New York National Guard rifle to the Savage Arms M1895, and afterwards Winchester engaged in legal action, saying the test had been rigged in Savage's favour, and the following controversy ended in the cancellation of the contract. Other users include Theodore Roosevelt, his son Kermit, and also the Nazi German Volkssturm, although the number of Winchesters actually in Volkssturm service is debatable, seeing as the Volkssturm just tended to use whatever they could lay their hands on. The ZH-29 was a Czechoslovakian rifle, developed in the late 20s as a way to increase the military might of the country. At the time, the ZH-29 was a truly innovative design, being one of the first semi-automatic rifles ever made. The weapon was beginning to pick up interest, and the Americans ordered a few trial versions, but the Great Depression ended all hopes of anyone buying any, and by the beginning of World War II the rifle was outdated. Had it been adopted by the US military, it could have become the first mass-produced, self-loading rifle, and would have beaten the Garand to it by almost a decade, but sadly the weapon was only ever produced in a prototype or trial form. As a side note, the Sniper Elite 4 rendition of the rifle has a 20-round magazine, whereas the real version was not available with magazines of this size, instead being offered with your choice of 5, 10 or 25 round mags. The M1 Carbine was a lightweight pistol caliber self-loading rifle used extensively by the US military as a supplement to the heavier, higher caliber Garand. The weapon was described by one soldier as one of the most appealing weapons, light, handy, easy to shoot and totally useless over 200 yards. The M2 Carbine followed in 1943, which was an M1 Carbine modified for selective fire to turn it into a sort of submachine gun rifle hybrid. The T-17 conversion kit used on the M2 could easily be installed on any M1 Carbine. Additionally, to support the higher volume of fire, the weapon could now use newly made 30-round magazines. Whilst no sniper variant of the M1 was ever produced, the M3 Carbine was produced from 1945 and was designed for use with the new infrared sniper scope, which was incredibly bulky. The M3 was not an ideal sniper rifle, but was chosen simply because it was very light, which helped offset the scope's incredible weight. The M1 Garand is perhaps one of the most famous weapons in the world. The weapon was controversial, using an 8-round clip that inserted and ejected vertically, producing a memorable ping noise. Some said the ping was liable to give away the position of a soldier during war, as it was distinctive, and it happened automatically after the final round was fired, but during the heat of battle it was unlikely that anyone would actually hear it. The Garand served admirably through World War II and even to the Vietnam War, when it was replaced by the god-awful M14. The Garand M1C, the sniper variant, was also produced and adopted in 1942. The weapon had an offset scope to allow the insertion and ejection of the on-block clips, and served alongside the Springfield sniper rifle into the early stages of Vietnam. The Ross Mark III was a Canadian rifle developed by Sir Charles Ross and saw service from 1911 to 1914, and then was withdrawn due to the weapon's need for thorough cleaning, rendering it a liability in trench warfare. Additionally, a rumour that the bolt mechanism could fly into the user's face if reassembled incorrectly put it out of favour. However, the Ross was a sniper rifle hopeful, and with optics mounted on the side of the rifle to allow the ingress and egress of stripper clips, the weapon entered sniper service. The reliability of the weapon was not much of an issue, as snipers were expected to take care of their weapons, but even so, and despite the weapon's excellent accuracy, it was withdrawn from service in 1916 after only 2 short years as a sniper rifle. The Swedish Mausers are a family of rifles used by Sweden in the early half of the 20th century. They were Mauser M1893 rifles, improved and manufactured by Carl Gustaf in Sweden. The rifles were incredibly robust and reliable. The sniper variant was produced from 1941, designated the Mauser M41, and featured a side-mounted scope, turned-down bolt handle, and the weapon was in service all the way into the 1960s. Thank you everyone for watching the video. Remember to like, subscribe and comment. It costs you nothing and it's a great way to help out the channel. Stay safe and goodbye.